Edifice of Trust podcast is a thoughtful discussion of today's current events from the perspective of America's founding principles. Welcome. From heart-pumping music to head-thumping commentary. The midterm elections of 2022 are shaping up into a mind-boggling, chaotic war between various factions that leaves most voters anxious and confused. Not only are the MAGA Republicans waging a cultural war with woke Democrats, the MAGA Republicans and the woke Democrats are also waging a war for control of their respective parties, naming people with differing opinions as traitors, or even worse, race traitors, and purging those lacking ideological purity or cult-like loyalty. Meanwhile, both groups are attacking American democratic institutions that stand in the way of the ideological purity they strive to achieve. Between the Proud Boys, Jane's Revenge, Oath Keepers, and Antifa, it is no wonder the cultural wars are a mess. The majority of the American people who just want to live their lives in peace and take care of their families are the pawns to be sacrificed in these great cultural wars. It is difficult to understand what is going on because there are so many different levels of conflict. Within the Republican Party, Trump's MAGA Republicans are accusing moderates of being rhinos, Republicans in name only, when in fact they are the ones that are rhinos. Loyalty to their Führer, Donald Trump, was never a part of the Republican platform in the past. Longtime Republicans like Senator John Cornyn are booed at the Texas Republican Convention because he is trying to work with Democrats to produce a reasonable reform to gun laws, a compromise that is being demanded by the American people. Far-right extremists attacked Congressman Dan Crenshaw and his staff at the same convention, shouting Tucker Carlson's epithet of "Eye Patch McCain" because of Crenshaw's war wound that took his eye, for having the temerity to have an opinion other than the one favored by Carlson, who the attackers echoed unthinkingly, as if long-term Republican Senator and war hero John McCain was somehow now worthy of the contempt of lesser folk. If the Republican Party of Trump cannot accommodate a steadfast Republican like Cornyn and true heroes like McCain and Crenshaw, then it is no longer the Republican Party. The Proud Boys would probably call Abraham Lincoln, who emancipated black slaves, and Ulysses S. Grant, who led the push for Reconstruction after the Civil War, traitors as well. Trump Republicans are an embarrassment. The woke Democrats are a little better. The Squad, led by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and 5 other left progressives, are the most prominent and vocal proponents of the woke agenda, but the House Progressive Caucus is made up of 100 members of the Democratic Party, and they have little tolerance for Democrats who hold more moderate positions. Despite a razor-thin majority, they insist on passing a far-left progressive agenda that includes all of President Biden's proposals, plus a few more dreamed up by Nancy Pelosi, such as the For the People Act, a voting reform that is intended to entrench Democrats in power for the foreseeable future. Progressive protesters have kayaked around moderate Joe Manchin's houseboat on the Potomac because he opposed trillions of dollars of excessive spending, and accosted fellow moderate Kyrsten Sinema in the ladies' bathroom for not voting to end the filibuster. The Justice Democrats, who backed AOC, are now pushing progressive challengers to moderate Democrat incumbents. Nearly 30 moderate Democrat incumbents are retiring ahead of the 2022 elections, with at least one stating that the Democratic leadership is beating moderates into submission. These internecine bloodbaths are just a prelude to the coming attack on America and its long-standing institutions. Whether the attack is from the left or the right, or more likely both, these radicals want to uproot the foundations of American greatness: limited government, checks and balances, the rule of law, economic freedom, and personal liberty. These founding principles are what kept America steady as it sailed through troubled waters of civil war, depression, and 2 world wars. We abandon these principles only at great peril. Ponder that while you listen to a brief message. Don't forget that my Edifice of Trust books, Principled Policy, Edifice of Trust 2nd edition, In Defense of Principle, and The People's God are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and iBooks. Thank you. Welcome back. In addition to fighting ideological impurity within the ranks of their nominal political parties, the MAGA Republicans and the woke Democrats are also waging a cultural war for the soul of America. But they are waging very different wars with very different strategies. Trump's MAGA Republicans want to clean out the swamp, purge the elements of the deep state from the government, and enfeeble democratic institutions to empower a Trump dynasty that will make America great again, at least to Mr. Trump's idea of what greatness is. The January 6th attack on the Capitol is a clear indication of the contempt they have for America's democratic institutions and traditions. Democrats want to infiltrate government and democratic institutions, in essence become the deep state, and to redirect the goals of such institutions toward their woke socialist ideology. Implementation of this strategy began decades ago. The movement began with the breakup of the Students for a Democratic Society not long after the riots of the 1968 Democratic National Convention in Chicago, with the radicals gravitating toward the Weathermen terrorist organization and the intellectuals gravitating back to academia to become graduate assistants, associate professors, and ultimately tenured professors that not only embraced Marxism, critical race theory, and other elements of the progressive left, but indoctrinated their students and shifted their institutions to this philosophy. There it festered and grew almost unnoticed by most of America. Now, woke ideology and anti-racist training is taking over the American Bar Association, various medical and psychiatric associations, including the American Medical Association, the human resource departments of many public companies, just to watch the ads for the Society for Human Resource Management on TV, and even training our future military officers at West Point. Neither the MAGA Republicans nor the woke progressive left represent the view of the majority of American citizens. They are the revolutionary vanguard of a new order. They are the Bolsheviks of the 21st century. They are the stormtroopers of the new order. And they want to lead America back to the politics of the first half of the 20th century that resulted in 2 devastating world wars based on ideology and great power politics. We must keep in mind the fact that at the time of the Russian Revolution, there were only about 30,000 Bolsheviks. But that small core of radicals was able to take over a country of about 125 million people. And also keep in mind the fact that the Nazi Party only had about 20,000 members in a country of 60 million people at the time of the Beer Hall Putsch. Do not sneer at the relatively small numbers of fanatical MAGA Republicans and radical woke Democrats. These are the revolutionary vanguards that hope to subject the entire country to their un-American ideologies. And they have more in common with each other than they do with the majority of the American people. They They are both driven by raw emotion and adhere to unproven and unprovable theories and ideologies that lack any empirical support and cannot stand up to reasoned debate, thus their reversion to violence. And don't be fooled into believing that their current political infighting will stall their efforts to take over the country. You must know your history to remember the Night of the Long Knives, when Hitler purged the Nazi party of Ernst Röhm and his SA stormtroopers in 1934, and Stalin's purges of the old Bolsheviks and others from the Communist Party beginning in 1937 that resulted in 700,000 deaths. We do not want to relive the 1930s. It was not a good time, and it led to even worse times. People around the world are turning their backs on democracy, and the United States is not immune. We cannot allow these radicals and extremists to define what patriotism means or what America stands for. Thanks for listening.